Are we sure she's not running some kind of sophisticated pyramid scheme, Arthur? Because this digital marketing sounds suspiciously like a tax on gullible millennials. The hook was delivered by my sister, Serafina, who didn't bother to lower her voice as she addressed my father across the expanse of the polished mahogany dining table. She adjusted the heavy diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist, letting the movement catch the chandelier light. A visible, tangible symbol of the financial stability she embodied, and I supposedly lacked. My name is Aria Hayes. I am 32 years old, and my side hustle was, in fact, a thriving global e-commerce and marketing automation firm. For the last 5 years, I had deliberately maintained the facade of working a casual, non-serious job, allowing my family, the Hayes dynasty, built on corporate law, commercial banking, and visible, physical assets, to publicly pity and dismiss me. The silence that followed Serafina's cruel joke was not one of discomfort, but of shared knowing amusement. They were the judges, and I was the perennial defendant. The context and character intro was essential to understanding the battleground. My father, Arthur Hayes, 65, was a formidable corporate lawyer, a man whose entire worldview was based on measurable, billable hours and concrete assets. My mother, Alara, 60, was the architect of their social standing, utterly terrified of any hint of instability or deviation from the approved corporate path. Serafina, 35, was the golden standard, a senior financial consultant, perfectly married, and living a life of unassailable, visible prestige. I was the disruptor. I had taken my degree in cognitive programming and data analytics, and refused the corporate track. Instead, I poured my savings into building Nexus Bloom, an algorithmic platform that identified niche market gaps, created automated product lines, and managed their global digital supply chain. To my family, this was just selling trinkets online. The background conflict had been simmering for years, starting with my refusal to intern at Arthur's law firm. Their judgment intensified every time I missed a formal corporate dinner because I was too busy, managing a peak holiday sales surge, an explanation they translated as playing on her computer. The current event. Trigger was the mandatory annual Hayes Family Christmas Gala, held in the main banquet hall of the local country club, a performance designed to showcase the Hayes family's unwavering stability and prominence in the financial district. The humiliation scene intensified as my mother, Alara, addressed me directly, her voice strained with carefully rehearsed pity. "Honestly, Aria, darling, it's just such a shame you waste that sharp mind on clickbait curation," Alara lamented, taking a delicate sip of champagne. "Serafina is negotiating a multi-million-dollar infrastructure deal next month. Arthur secured the zoning for the new city tower, and you keep getting those strange international packages delivered to your little apartment." The strange international packages. "Mom, our inventory shipments for a product line that sold over 50,000 units last quarter," I replied, my internal thoughts screaming, "You have no idea that those units fund your retirement." My father, Arthur, finally weighed in, his gaze heavy with disapproval. "It's the lack of scale and stability, Alara. A side hustle is fine for pocket money, but where is the equity? Where is the billable hour? You have no physical office, no proper staff, no overhead. Therefore, you have no tangible value in the eyes of the market. You are still living on potential that hasn't materialized into substance." The entire table chuckled again, savoring the final professional dismissal. Julian, my cousin, who ran a small, struggling local bank, leaned in. "We need to set up a side hustle tax, Arthur, just to remind Aria that her revenue streams are purely decorative." They believed I was barely breaking even, funding my life through a small trust and the goodwill of a few digital clients. They were obsessed with the absence of a large mortgage, the absence of a corporate title, and the absence of a visible asset. But they had no idea of the proof of worth sitting discreetly in my purse. A legal document confirming the final terms of a $25 million acquisition offer for Nexus Bloom from Krypton Global Technologies, a tech giant in Singapore. The deal was set to close tomorrow morning, making me a multi-millionaire overnight, with significant equity remaining in the newly formed subsidiary. The real immediate trigger that brought the timing to a head wasn't just the acquisition. It was the whispered conversation my father and Serafina had shared moments before dinner. I had overheard Arthur confessing to Serafina that the zoning deal for the new city tower, his supposed triumphant legacy, had hit a catastrophic, unrecoverable legal snag that would cost Hayes Legal their reputation and trigger a massive career-ending financial penalty. I excused myself to the restroom, my mind racing. The penalty was specific, tied to a failure to secure the necessary digital environmental compliance permits, a niche area Arthur had contemptuously ignored. My firm, Nexus Bloom, had a subsidiary that specialized in exactly that, digital compliance modeling for large-scale infrastructure. I quickly sent an encrypted message to my acquisition legal counsel, Mr. Davies. Initiate phase beta. Immediate public disclosure and legal readiness for targeted protective intervention. Returning to the table, I waited for the final toast. Arthur stood, his smile rigid, clearly trying to project confidence despite the impending disaster. To the Hayes family, Arthur proclaimed, raising his glass, to tangible assets, measurable success, and the enduring strength of our legacy. I also stood, raising my water glass. To the Hayes family, I agreed, my voice clear and cutting through the room's celebratory buzz. And to the undeniable value of the digital ecosystem. The family looked at me, annoyed by my intrusion. Before we proceed with dessert, I continued, addressing Arthur directly, I believe we need to address a small matter regarding the city tower zoning project, specifically the failure to meet digital environmental compliance requirements before the December 15th deadline. The reaction was catastrophic. Arthur's glass froze halfway to his lips. Serafina's perfect composure shattered instantly. Arya, how dare you discuss highly confidential, sensitive legal matters at this dinner? Arthur thundered, his face flushing crimson. This is completely inappropriate. Is it, Dad? I challenged, my internal engine running cool and fast. Or is it inappropriate that you chose to ignore the urgent legal warnings about digital compliance? Warnings which, I might add, were publicly available but simply filed under the digital nonsense you refuse to read? That's a matter for Hayes Legal to handle, Serafina snapped, trying desperately to salvage the scene. Hayes Legal is past handling it, Serafina, I stated, placing the Nexus Bloom acquisition contract onto the table next to my water glass. The golden logo of Krypton Global Technologies was instantly recognizable to Julian and the other finance-savvy guests. The penalty is set. The zoning is lost. The only thing that can save the firm's reputation and capital right now is a swift, strategic intervention from an expert in the digital compliance field. Arthur stared at the contract, his eyes darting between the Krypton logo and the terrifying financial figures of his impending loss. What is this contract? This contract? I said, leaning in, speaking loud enough for the entire table to hear the full weight of the revelation, is the final term sheet for the acquisition of my side hustle, Nexus Bloom by Krypton Global Technologies. The sale closes tomorrow morning for $25 million, making me the primary capital source in this room. A wave of stunned silence crashed over the table, far heavier than any of their previous laughter. And here's the problem, Arthur, I continued, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at the zoning penalty details. Your firm requires an immediate $5 million infusion and a proprietary solution to reclaim those permits. Nexus Bloom's compliance subsidiary, Archeo Systems, holds that exact digital compliance modeling technology, and I, the clickbait curator, am the sole owner of that technology. The turning of tables was absolute. I looked at Arthur, the man who had defined my life by his financial judgment. You have precisely 3 hours before the club closes to decide. You can face certain bankruptcy by relying on your tangible assets. Or you can beg your daughter, the one you dismissed for years, to use her digital distraction to save your firm and your legacy. The immediate aftermath was pure, explosive chaos. The dinner party disintegrated as guests scrambled to confirm the news of the Krypton acquisition. The financial guests, including Julian and his banker colleagues, stared at the $25 million figure on the contract, their faces contorted with sudden, envious realization. Arthur, pale and defeated, ushered the family into a private study, where the true, agonizing negotiation began. Arya, this is unbelievable, Arthur stammered, running a trembling hand over his expensive suit. Why did you never tell us the scale of your business? Why the secrecy? Because you were never interested in my success, Dad, I explained, sitting comfortably on a leather sofa, while they stood around me, agitated and terrified. You were only interested in my subordination. I maintained the secrecy to protect my growth from your contempt and your interference. Had you known the scale, you would have demanded I sell years ago and return to your law firm. I chose to wait until my success was large enough to purchase my freedom. Serafina, abandoning all pretense of corporate polish, launched a desperate attack. You're doing this for revenge. You waited for Dad's firm to fail just so you could swoop in and humiliate us. I waited for my valuation to exceed your firm's immediate liability, Serafina. I corrected her coldly. That is not revenge. That is strategic timing. And yes, the humiliation is a consequence of your actions, not my primary goal. Your firm's survival is my goal now, because the collapse would destabilize my own portfolio. Arthur cut her off, his voice thick with defeat. Arya, what are your terms? I will sign anything. Just keep Westlake Legal from acquiring us. I need to retire with my reputation intact. The negotiation was slow, painful, and meticulously documented, designed to dismantle their professional arrogance piece by piece. My terms are non-negotiable, Arthur. They are designed to correct the structural failures of your firm and the emotional failures of our family, I stated, pulling out a small, specialized legal tablet. Term 1, operational control. I will immediately infuse the $5 million needed to cover the penalty. In exchange, I take an immediate 60% controlling share of Hayes Legal. You retire tomorrow as chief partner. The new firm will be renamed Hayes Bloom Legal. I will appoint a new CEO, a digital specialist who reports directly to me. Your operational authority ends now. Arthur closed his eyes, the gravity of relinquishing control hitting him like a physical blow. He nodded a single agonizing confirmation. Term 2, Serafina's reassignment. Serafina is the COO. Her continued reliance on outdated, physically mediated contracts represents a massive liability. She is demoted to a non-executive role as head of legal documentation archives. Her sole focus for the next 2 years will be digitizing the firm's entire physical library, the very legacy she worships. She will report to the new CEO, and her salary will be reduced to reflect her non-executive status. Serafina gasped, a small, wounded sound. You're turning me into a glorified clerk, after I spent 20 years climbing the ladder? You are being given a stable, long-term job necessary to the firm's survival, Serafina. You can resign and face the financial district's judgment, or you can accept the consequence of your professional myopia. The choice is yours. Term 3, the Hayes Foundation. The Hayes Family Foundation will be immediately transferred to my management. The annual gala will be restructured. Its new mission will be funding digital literacy and small business incubation for women who choose non-traditional digital careers. The family will attend, but you will only speak to publicly laud the new foundation's mission and its founder, myself. This term was the emotional kill shot for my mother, Ilara. She lived for the social prestige of the foundation. Now it would be the platform for my professional ideology.
Arya, no! That's my social life!
You can't take that away, Ilara wailed, finally collapsing into genuine tears. Your social life, Mom, was built on the pretense of a perfect corporate family. The foundation will now reflect the reality that the digital future saved your legacy. The paperwork is ready. Sign now, or face the consequences. Arthur, recognizing the emotional pain inflicted on his wife, tried one last plea. Can't we just split the equity area? 50-50? Let me keep some authority? No, Arthur. You are here because you failed to see value in the future. I am here because I built that future. I own the solution, and therefore I own the outcome. The price of salvation is control. Arthur, heavy with resignation, signed the documents. The scratch of the pen on the contract sounded like the final, definitive stroke of a legal death sentence. The post-climax and extended consequences were drawn out over 5 agonizing, necessary years. The corporate fallout, year 1 to 2. The transition was ruthless. I never physically entered the old Hayes legal offices. I ran the overhaul entirely remotely, holding all meetings via video conference, directly mocking Arthur's old in-person handshake philosophy. The name Hayes Bloom Legal became synonymous with aggressive digital modernization. Arthur's fate. He was forced into the silent founder emeritus role. His punishment was watching the daughter he dismissed turn his struggling traditional firm into a profitable digital powerhouse, all without his input. He tried to interfere twice, and both times my board, whom I appointed, voted unanimously against him. He finally resigned himself to golf and reading classic literature, a man stripped of his purpose. Serafina's agony. Serafina took the demotion. Her 2 years spent digitizing the firm's archives were a sustained act of professional penance. She had to catalog every paper document, every old contract, and every physical asset, the very symbols of tangible success she cherished, only to see them converted into intangible digital data managed by my systems. She was eventually transferred to an outlying, smaller office, professionally neutralized. She divorced her husband, who cited her sudden, inexplicable financial instability as grounds, a final, cruel irony stemming from her professional failure. The social and personal decay, year 3-4. Ilara's social world collapsed predictably. The new Hayes Bloom Gala, now renamed the Nexus Bloom Digital Futures Gala, was a celebration of young, diverse digital entrepreneurs, making the old guard, including Ilara, feel utterly obsolete. She was forced to attend and smile, watching me champion the very values she feared. Her social friends, realizing the family's loss of status, slowly faded away. The ultimate symbolic reversal came when I used my personal acquisition funds, from the Krypton deal, to purchase the very country club where the original humiliation took place. I didn't announce it. I simply sent Arthur a discreet legal notice that his membership dues would now be paid to Nexus Bloom Holdings. I later restructured the club as a modern, collaborative workspace and innovation center for my digital company, retaining only the golfing greens as a recreational asset. The main dining hall, the site of my humiliation, was converted into a digital strategy war room. Arthur was forced to apply for an associate membership to his own former club, a humiliating request I granted only after a detailed background check. The final encounter, year 5. 5 years after the acquisition, I held a small private dinner in the newly converted digital strategy war room, formerly the grand dining hall. I invited Arthur, Ilara, and Julian, who had accepted a consulting role with a competitor and was slowly rebuilding his life. Serafina, unwilling to face the physical space, declined. The table was not mahogany, but a sleek, interactive digital screen, displaying global market data. Arthur, now soft and frail, looked around the familiar but utterly transformed room. "This is where I told you art was a hobby, Arya. This is where I told you your time was worthless." "Yes, Dad," I confirmed, looking at the ceiling, where a custom satellite data stream now projected real-time global sales data, the ultimate symbol of my digital empire. I remember the lesson perfectly, and I learned it well. "I am proud of you, Arya," he whispered, a statement that now felt utterly insignificant. "You created something lasting. You were right." "Your pride is accepted, Arthur," I said, meeting his gaze. "But it is irrelevant to my success. I bought your company not for revenge, but because your traditional path was a liability to the market. I saved your legacy, and in doing so, I purchased the authority to define my own worth." I turned to Julian, who was studying the digital table with a keen, professional interest, the first time he had looked at technology with respect instead of disdain. "You're doing well in your new role, Julian," I noted. "You learned the value of the digital asset." "I learned that my golden path was a paper tiger," he confessed. "You chose the real battle, Arya, and you won it completely." I didn't argue. My ultimate triumph was complete. I had taken the most potent forms of their mockery, the side hustle, the digital distraction, the lack of scale, and converted them into the only things they understood: immense, unassailable financial power and total corporate control. The side hustle was no longer a hobby. It was the foundation upon which their entire failed corporate world now rested. I had built the future they scorned, and I was now their sole financial and professional sovereign.